My tutorial on repairing an iPad screen repair. As you can see, the iPad is pretty damaged. I got the screen from gadgetmenders.com, and there it is on the website. And as you can see, the screen is pretty severely damaged, although the iPad still does work, but you can see the damage on the sides. But obviously the iPad is functional as we have it. So anyway, to kind of begin this repair, I needed some tools, but first thing I wanted to do is you got to make sure you turn off the iPad. So make sure you go ahead and do that and pull down the off button and then slide it off. I had different tools that I used. I used a Phillips screwdriver. I also used a small putty tool to kind of get underneath the screen, as well as a hairdryer. Also, Gadget Menders had a adhesive bonds that I was able to put on. That was very useful. And then along with that, yeah, let's go ahead and begin the repair. Now for the rest of the video, everything is going to be time-lapsed by 4. So it's going to be times 4 within the video, because this part is pretty mundane. It really just involves a lot of heating to melt the glue that's surrounding the edges of the iPad, and also just using a tool to get underneath the iPad screen to pull it off. And so this part needs to be done really slowly and just taking time with this. It should be noted too that the screen is actually reverse image, and so that's why things appear to be mirror image due to the camera that I was using for this part. So anyway, just take your time as you're getting the screen off. And again, this portion took me about an hour and a half. The screen was pretty well damaged, as you could tell, and so it took a little bit longer because I had to get a lot of the pieces out. So that's why you see me with a tweezers there, just getting the individual pieces out because it was so badly cracked. I could not remove the screen in one fell swoop because it was keep on cracking throughout, but it can be done. Okay, I'm going to let this video play real quick. I would like to note that there are some places on the iPad that you have to be careful when you are removing. The places include near the button of the iPad because that's where the wireless receiver is. My iPad did not have any 4G or 3G connectivity in terms of wirelessly, but that is at the top of the iPad. You also have to be careful where the camera mount is when you're removing the screen. So you just don't want to go crazy with your tool as you're sliding it underneath the screen. So be careful about those places. Again, the button, the camera, as well as the wireless connection, which is just to the right of the button on the lower half, and then also the 4G cables, which are at the top of the iPad. So be wary of those, not to break any of that. Okay, now what I've done is, this part is a little bit more involved, and so what I've done is I've slowed down the video to 2 times speed to show you how things were removed. And here I'm very carefully removing the screen off with my fingers. I'm trying not to touch anything underneath the iPad, and there's the screen. Do not touch the screen because it's very sensitive and your fingers have oil. Honestly, I should be probably having some gloves on my hands, but I'm really being cognizant of not to touch the screen. Now, if you notice at the very bottom of the iPad, I kind of put a paper towel there, as well as another kind of bubble wrap, because I'm going to be removing the screen towards myself. And after I take out the 4 screws that are located on each part of the screen, which attaches the screen to the iPad, make sure you know where the screws are because they are very small and very easy to lose. So after the screws are removed, I also remove any adhesive that is there, as well as the screws, and then pretty soon I'm going to be taking the screen and again lifting it very carefully towards myself. So you'll see that. Okay, and as I lift the screen up, you want to make sure again that you don't touch the display. But then also make sure you don't rip it out because obviously you could see it's being held by a ribbon cable there. So just carefully lift it out. And then what you want to do is if there's some tape um, adhering to the buttons on each side of this ribbon cable. So you want to very carefully scrape that off. And what I did is I actually saved that tape. I think Gadget Menders in their tutorial says you don't need it, but I decided to save it anyway. And then carefully lift up the tabs on either side to pull it up and out. And then you want to be very careful not to damage this the ribbon, as no doubt they'll have to pay for it. And as I'm releasing the ribbon, it's kind of adhered through some adhesive to the very bottom, so I'm being very careful not to rip it out, but just to gently lift it out from the adhesive backing, and then I just slip out the ribbon cable and put the screen off to the side because I'll be using that a little bit later on, but first I need to get all the debris out of the internal parts of the iPad. And so you'll see that. So what I'm doing right now is I'm taking all the adhesive that's off on the side so that way I could have a clean bond to it. I'm also removing any pieces of glass that were on in the inside of the iPad. And what's happening right now is I'm just taking off the old screen, the old cracked screen, and again removing the ribbon cable that holds the screen to the internal parts of the iPad and removing it and putting it aside. And now there's a place on the iPad where it got bent and damaged on the corner. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm just trying to round that out a little bit and straighten it with a pair of pliers to pull that back so it's not as damaged on the side. So that way the new screen will fit inside. And all I'm doing here again is just removing the excess glass that's inside the iPad as well as the excess adhesive so that way I can create a new bond by placing the new screen in. Ready to add the new uh, screen on. I very carefully take away the ribbon cable from off to the side to get ready to place that inside. As you can see, there's some adhesive, which is very, very nice. And actually, the adhesive was already included with the screen, so actually I didn't need to install that, which was a nice. So I installed the ribbon cable off to the side, and again, being very gently with this, kind of setting it inside, and it should go in by hand. Also, along with this too, I had the tape that I saved, and so I'm kind of putting this over the tabs after I close it first on the side. And so I'm just kind of making sure everything works and everything is um, in place before moving to the next step. So again, this is just installing the ribbon cable first. And now the next step is to grab the screen, or the display I should say, from the side. First I lay it flat, so that way again I'm being very careful not to touch it at all because you don't want fingertips on it. So I put it flat against with the bubble wrap, and then after that install the ribbon cable as before, very carefully pushing it inside, then also closing the tabs. And then next I'll be grabbing the piece of tape to cover on the sides just to make sure the bond is secure. Um, and then after that I'll go ahead and carefully place the screen back in. Again, don't touch the screen itself, but very carefully lay the ribbon cable flat so that way it doesn't bend. And what's not shown on here on this video, and I must have paused it initially, but what I did do is actually tested to see if the screen did turn on first. So do test it. And there's some glue that is provided that you could buy from Gadget Menders. And you could, what this is actually, it's super glue, but what's great about it is it's a gel. So it's not runny like most super glue, but it's a gel that remains as tackiness. So I'm able to kind of put it on all the sides where the new screen is going to go on. And next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and remove the adhesive bondings from the screen. And again, it's really nice that Gadget Menders had already installed this, so that way I didn't have to guess or put it on myself. And so all the adhesive is already there, which is nice. And then all I had to do is just kind of put it on. Make sure that it is square and flush, um, and make sure the beveled edges are have room for it as you continue out throughout. So anyway, carefully put the screen on and then go from there. Uh, Press the edges down. I did this by hand, making sure that the bond of the super glue gel is solid as well as the adhesive on the pads that it has. I turned it on just to make sure it works and is functioning. Then I had some clamps on my own, some C-clamps, but again, I wanted to make sure I wasn't scratching it. So I put it on the sides of it, and then just to make sure it holds and is a tight bond. Obviously, some of my clamps were C clamps, and so I put a rag around it so that way it would not scratch the iPad because that would defeat the whole purpose. So and again, this repair was relatively easy. The main part that was hard is actually just removing the screen. Once you get beyond that, then you should have success to put it on. But again, this is the very first time that I have ever done it. I purchased it from gadgetmenders.com. They had a really good price and were very helpful. And so anyway, I recommend them highly. And again, this is a repair that cost me around, I'd say, 80 bucks thereabouts, and was much better than what was advertised on the web. And I felt much more secure about it. Plus, you get the um, self-respect for doing it yourself. So anyway, I recommend doing it. Again, this is my first time doing it, and it can be done.